Welcome to the latest in our webinar series that explores decarbonisation in the most energy-intensive sectors around the world. My name is Alex Cameron. I'm the founder and CEO of Decarb Connect, and as many of you know, we sit at the intersection of decarbonisation and energy-intensive industries from cement to steel, glass to ceramics, refining and chem, and many more. In today's webinar, you're joining a discussion about the removal of barriers for adoption of widespread industrial CCS. And we've got panelists from Carbon Clean and from Chevron. And my job today is simple. It's just to introduce you to your moderator for the session, Laura Gillians. So let's get started and I'll hand you over to the real experts. So Laura is Carbon Clean's Director of Marketing and Communications. She's an experienced marketing and business development leader. We've known her for well over 18 months now, and it's been incredible to see the work that she and the team at Carbon Clean are doing. Laura brings much experience from central government as well as private industry, and at Carbon Clean she is responsible for leading marketing activities, communications and the inside sales operations. So Laura, may I hand over to you?
Thank you very much, Alex, and it's great to be with you today, and welcome everyone. Alex has introduced me. I'm Laura Gillians, the Director of Marketing Communications at Carbon Clean, and I am delighted to have you join us and be guiding you through our session today as we discuss how industry can advance a lower carbon future. It's not about the next hour, but the next decade of delivery. It is vital that we decarbonise hard-to-abate sectors while developing new low-carbon technologies. The IEA and others have been very clear that the deployment of carbon capture capacity must increase dramatically if we are to meet net zero targets. So without further ado, I would like to kick off and welcome our co-founder and CEO, Anirudh Sharma, who's been instrumental in building and developing Carbon Clean into a global leader in cost-effective carbon capture solutions. Anirudh.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much. And I do want to thank the Decarb Connect team as well for giving us the opportunity to come here and talk about the issues. Those are going to be absolutely central for decarbonizing heavy industry within this decade. Carbon Clean, we are a global technology company with over 44 operating sites and plants where we help heavy industrial companies decarbonize their operations, include cement, for example, TCC in Japan, steel, for example, Tata Steel in India. So we help heavy industry decarbonize their operations by not only providing them with cutting edge technology, but also bringing in business models, interesting business models that will allow them to achieve their own ambitions to achieve net zero. Carbon Clean was founded 13 years back with a vision to help enable decarbonize 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions. And we've been consistently and constantly working towards achieving those goals. Carbon capture, utilization, storage, CCUS, as per the Climate Change Committee in the UK, is a necessity. It's not an option. If we want to achieve anywhere close to net zero ambition, it's an absolute must that's required to be able to deliver the net zero vision. It's not only that, it also requires us all working together, heavy industry, technology providers, solutions providers, governments, other experts working together to massively ramp up the industry as we sort of go forward. And this is the key decade for making that happen. We have seen evidence where in the last decade, renewable energy was scaled up about 1,000 times. So I'm absolutely convinced that within this decade, we'll be able to scale up CCUS 1,000 times. And that's a huge opportunity for the industry, for service providers, and for the government and other stakeholders to participate in as well. We recently raised a round of investment from Chevron Corporation, further deepening our partnership and our common vision to deliver CCUS within this decade at large scale and sort of make it happen. I'm incredibly excited to welcome Chris Powers, Vice President of CCUS at Chevron New Energies, to this conversation. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Anirudh. How you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Right. Yeah, it's great to have you.
Hey, thanks so much for the kind words. It's really a pleasure to be here today, and really want to echo the thanks to the Decarb Connect team, Alex and others for giving us this opportunity to share, I think, our joint vision for how we're going to drive CCUS forward in the decade to come. Just real quick, my role, I'm the Vice President of Carbon Capture Utilization and Storage for Chevron globally. I'll talk about our new business that we've set up later called Chevron New Energies, but this is really our vehicle for driving forward decarbonization solutions, not only for our own businesses, but as a solutions provider for many businesses around the world in the years to come. Just a few quick comments on Carbon Clean and our relationship. Chevron has a long history of supporting innovation, and in fact, how this relationship started. Chevron Technology Ventures, which is our venture capital venture arm, made an initial investment in Carbon Clean in 2020, early 2020. And when we saw really the great technology that Carbon Clean was bringing to the market, and what we really thought was going to be a differentiator to open the market and be an enabler to really drive the carbon capture solutions that we need for the world. We look forward to continuing this partnership. So at Chevron, we work to apply our capabilities and our resources towards developing, commercializing breakthrough technologies. And we've had a long history of doing this in our traditional business and now in our lower carbon business as we move forward. And the key thing is identifying those technologies that can effectively compete in the marketplace and deliver the solutions that we need for the world. Our goal in investing in low carbon technologies like Carbon Clean and implementing pilots and early phase work is to demonstrate more efficient and effective capture solutions for emissions with the goal of scaling these and deploying these solutions worldwide. And maybe last comment I'll make here before flipping it back to Anirudh for some additional comments. Chevron and Carbon Clean are really excited about our next initial phase of partnership. We're working together on a commercial scale project in our San Joaquin Valley, California operations, where we're going to capture CO2 from an operating cogeneration plant from the turbine there. One of the technologies that we're using in this project is Carbon Clean's advanced rotary packed bed solvent capture technology, which you're going to hear more about today. And when this is successful, we're confident this opportunity is going to demonstrate the next step in scaling that's going to open up a much broader market worldwide. Anirudh, I'll flip it back to you.
Thanks, Chris. No, I think look, you've said it all. I mean, this is exactly what excites me as far as our partnership is concerned with Chevron, is that opportunity to be able to sort of work together and bring out breakthrough technology for projects like the one in San Joaquin Valley. I mean, I am quite excited and quite intrigued by Chevron New Energies, but I'm sure people listening to us are also quite interested in understanding a bit more about Chevron New Energies. So yeah, if you could tell us more about CNE, please.
Sure will, Anirudh. So this has been a pretty momentous change within Chevron. And to give a little bit of the background, Chevron's been in operation for well over 100 years. We recently celebrated the 101st year of being listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So long history as a company. And we've traditionally been in the traditional upstream, downstream, and midstream oil and gas business. But about 2 to 3 years ago, we started to do some strategic work inside the company and said, hey, the energy transition is happening. And what role can we play with our traditional skill sets and capabilities to help move the world forward in this energy transition? So some great foundational work was done over the last 2 years. And the big sort of momentous announcement that we made in the middle of 2021 was to form Chevron New Energies. And the remit and the goal of Chevron New Energies is to advance lower carbon solutions and to scale businesses in CCUS, in hydrogen, and then in offsets worldwide. So our goal is to target sectors of the economy where emissions are going to be harder to abate, and that's the ones we've already mentioned here earlier today, ones that cannot easily be electrified: cement, steel, refining, petchem, power generation, etc. We see, I'm responsible specifically for the CCUS business unit globally, and we see CCUS as an enabler in reducing the carbon intensity not only of our existing assets, but as I mentioned earlier, as really a service that we can provide around the world, partnering with great companies like Carbon Clean and then emitters to help develop solutions that can lower their carbon intensity and footprint. Just within the Chevron New Energies construct, we have an initial target of 25 million tons per annum of CO2 stored by the end of this decade. That's going to require very significant investment. And Chevron New Energies in total, as we've noted in our recent Analyst Day, we're intending to spend $10 billion by the end of this decade on new energy solutions. A lot of focus around regional hubs, where we can leverage our existing experience and infrastructure and our partnerships with existing customers, with governments, and with harder to abate industries to drive these solutions forward. So maybe in summary, we're focused on investing in innovative projects across the CCUS value chain to reduce costs, to develop new ways to capture, use, and sequester carbon with the goal of scaling these solutions worldwide. And we truly believe that Carbon Clean is going to be one of the key pieces of the puzzle to solve this puzzle for the world.
Absolutely, Chris. And I think you've focused on a couple of very, very important points. I mean, heavy industry is, absolutely key towards achieving the ambition, especially working with the likes of steel, cement, energy from waste, refining, chemicals, petrochemicals. I think all these industries are kind of unique in the sense that there's no replacement for the final products they produce. So we need to have them for at least foreseeable future. But at the same point of time, I think the challenges around carbon capture for these industries are quite unique as well. I mean, if you think about some of the work we're doing with cement companies, we've in the whole process, we basically come to realize that if you want to achieve a deep decarbonization in a cement industry, then carbon capture is probably the only solution. I'm sure there are other opportunities. I mean, people are exploring use of hydrogen and use of electrification as well in that industry. But I think an industry that's almost the size of a third of the carbon emissions, that could potentially be coming in from heavy industry. I think you just need all options out there for companies to come together and work. I mean, just for the people who are attending the session today, just for their benefit, Cyclone CC, which is the latest technology Carbon Clean has launched, is essentially rotating packed beds, which reduce the size of the carbon capture equipment by 10 times and reduce the footprint by 5 times, thereby enabling almost 2/3 of the heavy industrial units and industrial sites out there to be able to actually implement carbon capture, which certainly wasn't possible before. So I think it's quite a change, quite a step change, especially for the heavy industry out there. I mean, this is something that I want to understand, Chris, from you as well. What excites Chevron about Carbon Clean and the opportunities that could potentially be developed together? You talked about the concept of industrial cluster and hub. So how this whole could potentially be developed as a service, I guess.
Yeah, happy to respond to that, Anirudh. The things that I think are, first of all, start about what makes us excited about Carbon Clean. Your patented technology, which really, as you just mentioned, drives down the cost and the scale, is really what we think is going to be a key enabler. And I'll speak from sort of my experience working across Chevron's upstream, downstream, and midstream segments. A lot of places, let's face it, we have confined plot plans and plot limits. And the technologies that we're talking about here in the traditional conventional sense are very large amine absorbers and amine strippers. In a lot of places, even if you had the wherewithal to want to make the investment and you had the unlimited funds to spend on these higher cost technologies, you really just don't have the footprint to get it in. So really developing a solution where you can drop in, where you can modularize, you can connect up to flue streams, you're able to develop a fit for purpose solution that will actually work and fit within the physical and I'll say economic constraints of the system, and you can get it done in an efficient and effective manner. So this is really, I think, one of the things that really excites us the most is being able to have a solution that fits a need, that's going to allow the industries that have invested in their existing plants to keep those in service for decades to come, to support that capital employed base while delivering a solution that's going to meet the decarbonization need.
Exactly, and I think this is absolutely central and key to the some of the challenges we see out there, which is a huge transformation in the industry is happening here, where people are sort of moving towards the green industry. There's a huge energy transition happening, and I think we clearly see there is an absolute need for creating an industry where new jobs could be created, and more people could basically be brought in to help work on new skills and new technologies that'll be coming out. I guess, I mean, it's one of the things we'll also want to understand from you, from the global vision and the global hat you have. Do you have a prioritization on carbon capture? I mean, I've been to many meetings where people say, "Oh, we don't need any carbon capture. We need all renewables, and it'll all be fine." So I think from the global experience and conversations you're having out there, sort of what's the map, what's the prioritization that you're seeing out there?
It's a great question, and it's a great topic that I'm involved in many different discussions, Anirudh. You do have, like, we're a pragmatist organization. I'm personally a pragmatist. I'm an optimist in believing we can do anything we want, but a pragmatist in terms of, hey, we're starting where we are and we have to get to the end goal. And so our view is that it is going to be a transition. This is not a step change to an instantly fully green solution. And that's where carbon capture and storage really comes in, and Carbon Clean can come in and play a key role in that market, right? We can develop solutions that help maintain the capital employed base in many of these industries, but can achieve the decarbonization goals. And so when we think about just within our own fleet, and then I'll talk about third party in a second, as we prove up the cyclone CC technology, we see many applications around our upstream assets in places as diverse as Australia and the US and the Permian, other locations around the world, our refineries in the US and in other regions in Asia, where you can drop in Carbon Clean as a solution to meet the needs in a cost efficient, effective manner. And then when we open that up to the broader market, where we can do together CCS as a service, all the industries we mentioned, cement, heavy industry, steel, et cetera, other chemicals, these are all target markets where this is going to, I think, really play a key role in driving economic doability as we move forward.
Absolutely, Chris, and I think maybe one of the other parts I probably want to talk about as far as our strategy is concerned is, with our partnership with Chevron, I think one of the things we're also seeing is, how do we actually give confidence to the end users that, look, it's not only about capture, but it's also about, the capability on the transport and storage as well, that that this partnership could bring out there. Yeah, I mean, I just want to maybe understand what's your view on the TNS part of the solution.
Yeah, it's the critical piece, right? We've got the technology now with Carbon Clean working together to implement the capture piece to a broad swath of the industries worldwide. But then what do you do with it, right? And there are currently niche uses for captured CO2, right? Whether it's greenhouses, whether it's food and beverage, but it's really niche markets right now. So what are we going to do with this? And that's really where the transportation, this hub model that many have probably heard about, comes in. And then maybe some of the new utilization technologies where you can mineralize or otherwise permanently sequester the CO2 in a unique configuration, or just traditional sequestration, which is in more of our historical skill set. But that's where you got to bring it all together. So it's doing the capture, but then working together as sort of industrial hubs to say, okay, let's work together to aggregate our emissions. And then we've got to identify target reservoirs where we can inject and store the CO2 for decades, as is the expectation by our key stakeholders, governments, and others, right? So I think it's getting the industries to come together to identify the reservoirs and then to develop a robust long-term injection and monitoring program. And that's a skill set that Chevron can bring to the table to help stitch together those pieces in the value chain so that we have a doable project. And that's one of the things we've done for 100 years is we do these projects that can be challenging to bring the multiple stakeholders and multiple partners together to make a reality. But with the volumes we're talking about, storage solutions are going to have to be a key part of the equation. And it's complicated, right, Anirudh? I mean, some regions are blessed with natural geology where they're highly favorable, whether it's depleted oil and gas reservoirs or saline aquifers. We can do this very, very readily and easily. Other regions, they have to look at more creative utilization and storage solutions that don't have the favorable geology. Maybe you have to look at liquefaction of CO2, transportation to other regions, or targeting more unconventional formations for the sequestration. So there's a lot of work to do in this space, but I think we're confident when we look at the full value chain, we can deliver solutions to customers and partners.
Exactly, Chris. I mean, it's much more nuanced, and I think majority of the companies, I think we both are having conversations with and actually trying to piece the puzzle together and trying to solve, like, how do they actually resolve the bigger question, the bigger problem. I think on our part, Carbon Clean's part, I mean, with this partnership, and as we sort of go forward, one of the problems and key challenges we'll also be solving the supply chain. I mean, if you have a unit, carbon capture unit that can actually fit in onto a skid and it's fully modular, then you can think about mass manufacturing that could further reduce the execution time, the delay time. It could optimize the cost, and there are quite a few things that could actually be done. Especially given current circumstances. I mean, you look at the steel price have gone up like 52% over past 2 years. So I think majority of the companies and customers, if they're thinking about a bespoke project, by the time they actually get to financial investment decision, they're actually probably facing a completely different cost picture than from where they started. So I mean, where do you see Cyclone CC could potentially be deployed and the impact it could have?
I love the comments you made about the modularization, the scalability. So let me start there. I had a unique role within Chevron about a decade ago, managing a fabrication yard, and we had a factory approach. We had a standard design for our wellhead platforms, and we were able to sort of print them out. Right, it was a standard jacket, a standard top sides, a standard set of piles. And man, the cost efficiencies and the delivery efficiencies you see when you can get into a factory type model, a gigafactory type model, are amazing. You can really drive down the costs. You can improve the deliverability and the repeatability of your product, right? So that's one of the things that also, we didn't touch on it really earlier, that excites me about Carbon Clean's technology. Is you see, and when I went out and saw your test facility, you can sort of see it. Okay, I can absolutely see how we can put this together in a factory approach. We can stamp these out, in sort of an appropriate but limited number of SKUs, right? This size, or this size, and then that'll meet the needs of a broad variety of the market. So I think moving as we build the sort of the order docket, and then can move into more of this factory approach, I think it's going to be a huge enabler to drive down costs even further. So and then deployability. I think then once you have driven the costs down and have this sort of assembly line type approach, you're going to be able to hit so many different additional flues that maybe weren't viewed as being possible with sort of a bespoke model, and it's really going to open up the market.
Fine. I couldn't agree with you more there, especially given the ambition in every single geography the governments want to pursue. I mean, in the UK, the government wants to pursue a 30 million ton per year CO2 capture target. I think there's even a higher ambition in the US. By the time you start to put all of this together, you say, okay, well, where exactly is the delivery capability, and where exactly is it actually going to come out? I mean, at Carbon Clean, we have recently launched what we call as an early access program, through which we are actually working with companies outside our normal partnerships we work with. And that includes a couple of blue chip names, for example, Equinor, Marubeni, Cemex, who are all investors in our business. So we're looking to sort of launch a new program using which we'll be giving access to new companies, new potential partners to actually come and see what's happening as far as this new technology is concerned. But at the same point of time, give them an opportunity to sort of join the queue as we build this order book, to sort of come and say, yes, I'm interested. You know what? I actually want to go and do this. This is my strategy. This is my plan. I do want to invite Glenn Bailey, who's our Director of Sales for North America, to join in and talk a bit about early access program. And want to thank Chris for his time and for this conversation with us.
Thank you very much, Anirudh and Chris. I'm thrilled to be here, part of this conversation. And going to your conversation, your mention of the early access program on Cyclone CC. Hopefully you can see this on your screen, and that I'm coming across okay. So first of all, the Cyclone CC, I wanted to talk about this. This really lines up very well with the company mission of addressing industrial customers' need post-combustion carbon capture with reduced footprint and lowest cost per ton. So I mean, that's something that's a real challenge, on these brownfield sites. There's not a lot of extra space, as Chris was mentioning. And so you got to have a modularized approach that's going to minimize disruptions to the operations whenever you start implementing this carbon capture. What we're doing here is bringing together two process intensification technologies. One is using our CDR, our patented enhanced amine CDR Max solvent, which has been out for a decade, and then bringing in rotating packed beds within the traditional amine plant process flow. So this is 100% modular, scalable. As mentioned, shop fabricated is a key, fully standardized, and this is really driving towards the reduced size and cost. Now, many people in the audience are surely familiar with a post-combustion amine flow diagram. What we have here is you'll see these kind of gray circular looking devices in the absorber and stripper section. Those are typically pretty tall columns, take a lot of, they're tall, take a lot of footprint, add cost, and they essentially require a space allocation within the facility that when we bring in these rotating packed beds, which I'll talk about in just a second, show a little information, that really allows everything to be compacted and really enables the modularization of the system. Now, this flow diagram in general has been proven within the industry. This is something that engineering construction firms are very familiar with. It's the combination of bringing in our CDR Max and rotating packed bed, which are the big innovations and a big breakthrough for the industry. Now, this is a little video. Let me see if this will run, and there should be some audio that comes along with it.
Solvent is introduced into the RPB at its center, where it's sprayed onto the packing via a liquid distributor. When the solvent contacts the packing, the centrifugal force applied to the solvent from the rotational motion forces the solvent to travel radially towards the outer edge of the packing, where it drains down to a sump before being pumped to the next stage of the process. The flue gas is introduced to the RPB from the outer edge of the packing and exits at the inner edge, where the solvent enters. Therefore, the gas and the liquid contact each other in a countercurrent fashion. The flue gas is absorbed by the solvent, and the CO2 present selectively reacts with the active components in the solvent, thereby temporarily locking the CO2 within the solvent.
Great. Now, customers, whenever they look at Cyclone CC, there's two things they value. Certainly the footprint reduction, but they want to know about the cost reduction path as well. We bring two things, both Capex and OpEx reduction. The Capex starts with that RPB that we're talking about, which enables the equipment size reduction. Then we do this assembly line, shop fabricated standard modules. Then on the OpEx side, it's really the solvent. So we have an enhanced amine solvent that is very stable relative to a industry standard MEA type amine. That means there's a lot less breakdown, which means less makeup solvent. It's also very high CO2 absorption rate on the absorber side. And then throughout the system, it is a low energy requirement. That energy is one of the large OpEx costs typically in a system. So we're addressing that. This overall Cyclone CC is very, very much interesting for the customer base that's looking at the carbon capture implementations. So the early access program, what we're, as Anirudh had indicated, for companies that are looking at carbon capture, Cyclone CC is one that they're interested in for sure. We're in the final stages of development and planning for commercialization. And as we go through that, customers are going to want to know things about the footprint, more about the capacities. So we've announced several already. They want to get engaged in technical and commercial conversations and planning for that project deployment, so that whenever we're ready to start taking orders for the broad market, then we will have already been engaged. And the way to do that, the way to enable that, is through this early access program agreement. And for anybody that wants to talk about that, discuss it, please do contact me. Here's my email address. And yeah, that's the overview that I was planning on.
There's been lots of questions, I'm pleased to report. So thank you to all the registrants for feeding those through. I don't think we're going to get to all of those, but we'll certainly get to as many as we certainly can. First question, probably one for you, Glenn. What is the smallest and largest plant size available? And can you share a little bit more about Capex and Opex at this stage?
Well, so yeah, what we've spoken about in our earlier market announcement, our CTO was talking about 10 tons per day at the smallest size, ranging up to several hundred tons per day carbon capture. So it's one that I'm going to defer to conversations that we like to do under NDA, quite honestly. For a lot of this, it is kind of controlled information, but we definitely welcome all those engagements. And then from a cost standpoint, the industry standard is potentially and well above $100. So we're driving cost per ton. So we're driving that down. It's definitely going to be something that, in order to meet some of the kind of money points to make a project go, it's going to require substantial reduction in that cost of capture. So we're focused on that carbon capture piece. Okay.
Great, Glenn, and thanks, Eduardo, for that question. Next question from Naveen. I'll pass this one to Anode and/or Chris, which either one of you would like to take it. What are the major challenges in CCUS operations from the viewpoint of automation?
Andrew, do you want to go first, and then I can piggyback, or either way?
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there were a couple questions I noticed in the chat broadly around CCS operations. So I think that the point I'll open with is, we and others in the industry have been doing CCS for decades, right? So currently we operate our CCS project at Gorgon. It's one of the largest ones in the world. We're sequestering multiple million tons per year at that operation. And I think Glenn hit on it in a couple of the view graphics he showed, right? So fundamentally, these are the type of, and I'm a chemical engineer by background, so I apologize, I'm going to get a little bit into unit operations here. These are fundamentally basic types of unit operations that we've used in the industry, in a variety of industries, for decades, right? So whereas traditionally you'd have an amine absorber and a stripper, this is new technology with rotary packed beds, right? But fundamentally we use rotary equipment all over the place in refineries, chemical plants, cement industries, et cetera, right? So we might use them in compressors and pumps. That part, I think, it's just a matter of doing the pilot and getting it done. This is not something that we're not going to be able to overcome. And we've in our sort of legacy operations, we've been operating successfully again for many years. So I don't see a huge concern around doability. It's innovation to drive the cost down, but it's in the family of unit operations that we've been doing for many years. Andrew, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've said it all, Chris. I think the only thing I would probably add is cyclone CC itself. The rotational speed of the equipment itself is no more than what you would see in a standard compressor. So I think, again, there's a lot of experience out there, and so how to maintain these rotational equipments and all, and get them going. So I think it's pretty standard. It's not something that's really high performance at this point of time. It's pretty standard. It's pretty usual.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, guys. We've got another question for probably both you, Anirudh and Chris. Thanks, Sandeep, for that. And it's one relating to cost again, but how do you see the progression on reducing the cost of CCU and CCUS over the years? He does reference that it's cost prohibitive at this stage for cement, but we may argue that it's not. So yeah, take it away, Anirudh.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it is cost prohibitive, especially if you're trying to do it at a small scale, or if you're trying to build a bespoke unit. But I guess really the solution here is how do you actually do things at scale, and at the same point of time, how do you actually modularize them, standardize them, so that it's the same box that's kind of getting replicated again and again. In reality, most of the companies that we're having conversations with, be it cement or be it steel, heavy industry, they're thinking about decarbonization in phases. So first phase, let's say 3 years, decarbonize 25%. Second phase, another 3 years, let's decarbonize another 25%. So I think you have an opportunity there to actually already build this within your strategy and within your decarbonization plan, and come up with a scalable modular approach that you could just go and replicate. The first one will be a little expensive, but number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, I think the cost will start to come down quite significantly. Chris?
You've said it really well, Anirudh. I'll maybe talk a little bit about what we do internally, which builds on the point you just made. When we look at an industrial facility or a site, we have a work process. I won't use the acronym, but we've got a work process that we use where we basically identify each of the sources and then understand the cost of what's the volume of the source, and then what's the cost of the capture of the source. And you're going to attack those from the most ripe opportunity to the most challenging, right? And I think it's exactly what you said. Folks are going to take it in stages. You're going to hit the initial ones and then go from there in a facility. And really the quip, I mean, folks have different numbers, but the reason innovations like carbon cleans are so critical is that the cost to capture is by far the largest component of an integrated CCS project, right? I mean, the injection well and then the long-term reservoir modeling, that's again something that we've been doing for many, many years, and the costs are relatively manageable. So the step change improvements we can get on capture technology are what's really going to drive the overall costs down for the value chain.
Yeah. And I think this is really where your project in San Joaquin Valley actually becomes quite important, quite critical. I mean, I think that the way I see it, it's like the first demonstration at a large cogeneration plant. But if you also think about it, if you take a step back and say, okay, cogen plants in the US and North America are kind of the bedrock of a lot of the energy industry operations out there. So you're basically not only proving it out for one specific facility, you're basically sort of demonstrating this for the whole industry to then go and say, okay, we're going to decarbonize and we're going to do it like this.
That's right. And if you think about, I mean, the numbers, again, it's to Glenn's point, we probably won't use actual numericals in this discussion today, but you think about the fleet of cogens and turbines that we have, and then you multiply by the many, many other companies out there, it's a very large addressable market where you can really make meaningful reductions.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I want to pop in too and just comment that the market application, the industry application is so diverse. Certainly cogen is great, but I know that Chevron and others, certainly us, we're targeting a lot of different application spaces. And I think about midstream, I think about CHP, certainly, I think about hydrogen generation, I think about anything with a boiler. So, I mean, it's amazing, really. I mean, it's from the oil and gas industry in the past few years, we would wonder, where's the next project coming from? Because but it's really it just opens up so much activity and so much of the construction capacity and engineering talent is targeted towards, okay, what do we do with the CO2 emissions? And so, yeah, it's fantastic. And your project is fantastic to start with.
Yeah, Glenn, you said it really well. And then we can flip it back to Laura for the next question. But it's really, think about flutes. It's really any of those. There's a myriad of opportunities that we can target across many different sectors.
Perfect, Glenn. I think you teed up the next question wonderfully then as well. AJ, it's not one that Glenn has not been asked many times before, but his question is regarding the use of CO2 captured apart from storage. What else do you do with it?
Okay, it really is, CO2 has been a base requirement in a lot of product production for decades. Like in the UK, we don't hear about this that much, but Last year, there was a shortage of CO2, believe it or not. But it just goes into a great number of products. There's new applications that are being developed, like in the mineral space, about CO2 being incorporated into concrete product. In steel production, that's part of it, CO2. I've actually got a slide that has maybe 30 or 40 different major boxes on it. But at the end of the day, even with all of those utilization spaces, I've heard in several places that if you do all that utilization, you're still hitting only the tip of the iceberg, and it's going to require storage. 90% of the CO2 that gets captured, it's going to have to get long-term storage.
Thank you, Glenn. And next question, one for you, Anirudh. How is Carbon Clean planning to be cost effective in parts of the world where there's not necessarily decarbonisation incentives available? And Asia's touched on in reference to that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think then to be honest, the way this is probably going to work in geographies where there's no regulatory requirement or where there's no financial incentive. I think the way this is going to work is people are going to put a much higher value on the final product if you say this is low carbon product. I think we've already seen an experience in foods industry. There's a normal milk and there's organic milk, and organic milk is a little more expensive than normal milk. I think we're probably moving to that direction. I was recently attending a meeting where people in steel industry were discussing about how they could potentially label their products to say how much carbon emission is actually coming out, and people can actually make choices on whether they want a really carbon intensive product or they want a non-carbon intensive product. So I think it's those market driven interventions, those are going to actually pay for all of this. We have already seen this in India. So Carbon Clean has an operating unit in India in a South Indian town called Tuticorin, where we capture carbon dioxide, and on site it is converted into a green chemical, which is then used by Unilever to produce low carbon detergents. It's the only facility globally where Unilever actually produces low carbon, almost carbon neutral detergents out there. And there's a premium for it. It's a premium market, it's a premium product. The hotels and 5-star hotels basically come up and say we want to reduce our carbon emissions. So I think it's those kind of mechanisms that will actually drive people to think about carbon emissions reduction.
Great, thank you for that. Next one for both Anirudh and Chris on this one. Can you foresee another quantum leap in the next generation of technology and cyclone CC, or have we already reached a peak in efficiency?
I think I could probably talk about this. So I don't think there is any such thing as have we hit a ceiling or something like that. I think there is an opportunity to actually go out and work on reducing carbon emissions or reducing the overall cost of carbon capture quite significantly. One of the things that we're working on now, it's a project funded by US Department of Energy, is something called waterless solvents. So I think just for the chemical engineers on the conversation, just a quick fact, about 50% of the energy you give to any carbon capture equipment is basically wasted to vaporize water. You're taking the water from 45 degrees to about 120 degrees. So the latent heat of vaporization is actually 50% of the heat. So I think our team is working on a new innovative product. We are actually going to take the water out of the chemicals. So it's like completely water lean or water less solvents, and you can reduce the energy consumption by 50%. So another step change that will come up at some point of time. So I think there's no limit to innovation, to be honest. Chris.
Yeah, Anirudh, I think I would generalize it. You gave a couple of specific examples there. I think we see when we look at many decades of operation, when you pick any individual type of unit operation, we're always on a continuous improvement journey. We call it leading performance, where we're trying to continuously drive down the cost or up the efficiency in our operations. And I'd share the same ambition with you that we're in early days, and we're going to continue to drive forward with ongoing improvements.
Perfect, thanks. And Glenn, back to you. I've got a bit of a more technical question. Can you touch on how the other compounds commonly present in flue gas are handled through the carbon clean process? So NOx, SOx, and those other elements.
Sure. Yeah, so the purpose of our system is the CO2 capture. Whenever we're engaging with a customer, one of the first things that we'll do is ask them about their flue gas composition. So what's the flow rate? What's in the flue gas? And so it's going to be nitrogen, H2O, the CO2, and then there will be maybe some particulates, SOx and NOx. And yeah, there are. These are things that typically react with an amine solvent, and we do have some limits. If there is, a high level of SOx and NOx within this flue gas, we'll pre-treat and bring that down to the level needed. Otherwise, there's often not, pre-treatment that's required. Yeah, but no, it's an early stage engagement. We'll have that technical conversation and discuss with the customer what's needed there.
Okay, great, thank you. And open question.
One other thing I'll mention is that customers have indicated that they like about the fact that our CDR Max solvent doesn't react that much with oxygen. So it's also, that's part of its stability measure.
Okay, great, thank you. An open question for whoever wants to take it. Will the reuse of CO2 ever become cost efficient for green-based fuel in cars, airplanes, ships?
I don't know, probably Chris. I think it's you've got a much broader view.
Yeah, I'll make a stab at that one. Look, I think it's similar to where other parts of the energy transition were maybe years ago. Maybe some of the technologies that are for conversion of CO2 into products, I think, are in early stages now, right? So I'll speak from our venture arm. We look at all of these companies that are in very early stage, kind of Series A level stages right now, and there are some that clearly have huge hurdles. There are others that are potentially more clear line of sight to a solution in the future. Look, it's CO2 is fundamentally it's a low energy molecule, right? Again, back to the chemical engineering, carbon plus oxygen, you get CO2 and you end up with a low energy molecule. So you're going to have to drive through some sort of energy input, advanced catalysis, et cetera, energy into the system to come up with a valuable product. I think just like everything else, we will continue to make progress in this space. And by we, I mean the broader sort of tech sphere will continue to make improvements in this space and drive the costs down. And we'll have to see which technology or technologies will be most competitive over time. Anirudh, anything to add to that?
No, I think you've hit the nail. Absolutely correct.
Okay, perfect. Another one back to you, Glenn. Are there any retrofitting challenges faced with regards to Cyclone CC?
So retrofitting, you said.
Mm-hmm.
So fitting into an existing brownfield site.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Certainly there is going to be some balance of plant engineering and construction that's involved with a project. So, these refineries, anything that's existing, really hadn't thought about someday having to flip a switch and do, expand the facility, do carbon capture. So there's that exhaust gas that has to get routed to the carbon capture module. And then there's going to be, routing that depleted gas to where the exhaust is going to go. So yeah, and then also the utilities on site, perhaps, there is some energy requirement. We actually have a low electrical load. So that's a good thing, but there has to be electrical, there just has to be space. And, then we have to work with partners. Typically this is, a discussion about whose scope is it in, but things like foundations and other interfacing to the site. So yeah, that's a whole nother topic.
Okay, perfect. And you touched upon the basics there, but I know we've had lots of questions in about the cost per ton captured that we're looking to target. Is there anything you can say about that across various applications? Is there a difference across the hard-to-abate sectors, so from cement to power to steel? Will that vary?
Yeah, I'll just say on this, and maybe Anirudh wants to pop in and answer it, more fully. But really, the higher CO2 concentration type streams are going to have a lower cost per ton just inherently. That it requires, so the same piece of equipment is going to get more CO2 out of a high CO2 stream. A lot of these low CO2 concentrations, like gas turbines, gas-fired boilers, are at the lower end of that spectrum. And so, yeah, it's going to be something that it's going to be beneficial to use a Cyclone CC type modular approach to have the best solution possible. But it just goes into the financial equation about what's it going to take to get the kind of value and other kind of tax benefits, things like that. So it's an equation then that all goes to what's going to work out.
Yeah, exactly, Glenn. I think I'll probably add, look, I mean, our stated ambition vision is to reduce the size, super significantly reduce the footprint by 5 times, and then get it all on a skid mounted unit so that you can potentially try and achieve a 50% cost reduction in the equipment cost. But I would say that to be able to arrive at $1 per ton number cost of carbon capture, I think it's a whole host of things that actually goes in. So for example, where is your site? How are you going to connect it? Are the utilities available? Are they not available? So I guess there's quite a lot of things that you need to do to be able to do that. I mean, we are absolutely available here to sort of have a conversation on a bilateral basis and sort of work with you to understand what this really means for your site and for your locations.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to take one more question and then we can go to closing comments because I'm conscious time is ticking away. Roxana, thank you for your market question, and it's in regard to have CCUS plans been affected due to gas prices? Do we foresee such a scenario affecting the market moving forward? And are there any other alternatives that you're looking at to decarbonize? Anirudh, Chris, I don't know which one of you wants to take the lead on that, and the other can jump in.
I think probably Chris, if you take a lead, that'll be great.
Yeah, it's a great question, and first off, it's a terrible situation ongoing right now, and the impact it's had to those affected, and then the broader world, right? I think we've talked about this internally. I think if nothing else, this just reinforces the need that we need to work forward on innovative energy transition solutions. CCUS being one of those, as well as the others I've mentioned earlier. So we're going to continue to drive forward, and we're taking the long game. And I think the view is we're going to continue to need CCUS solutions for many years to come, even more so.
Yep, exactly, Chris. I mean, I think one thing is quite clear from an energy, the current disruption that's going on, be it energy, be it inflation, be it other heavy industries, is that I think as we move ahead, the world would probably need to move towards quite a lot of independence and quite a lot of sort of decarbonization, looking for solutions close to home, rather than sort of relying on something that's far, far away. So I think, probably would cap it with that.
Perfect. Anybody want to follow up with any closing remarks at all, or comments?
I just probably want to maybe mention this and follow up towards the closing, and would absolutely invite Chris as well to talk about that. Look, I mean, as far as decarbonization is concerned and heavy industrial decarbonization is concerned, I think it's not something that is that can be achieved in a year, maybe in 2 years' time. I think it's a longish process, and you just need to take that long-term view. I think there's generally a tendency to say, oh, actually, carbon prices are up, carbon credit prices are up, let's do something quickly. And I think that's not really the right approach to do. I think you should think about long-term strategy, long-term vision, how much you want to decarbonize, and then go from there. The best projects we've actually delivered in partnership till now are actually are with the partners, where partners are absolutely committed towards the long run, towards the long term. So I guess that's one. Second, I think it's really, really important to have a team in place internally who could actually work with solutions providers like ourselves and and Chevron New Energies to actually do this on a daily basis. I mean, I think it's just approaching it on an ad hoc basis is probably not going to get you to where you want to be. And number 3 is just view on carbon capture as a service. We are working on it. We are sort of trying to work out and come up with the business models that could actually work there. It's an amazing time right now. Most of the governments are committing towards net zero. They're putting money behind that. If this is something that you want to do and you want to partner with us on, we are absolutely open for business.
Andrew, I'll just build on that. I think about 3 things in the here and now that it takes to drive forward CCUS and broader new energy solution. It's policy, it's innovation, and it's partnership. So on policy, I think about that means it of course means government and supportive economic policies, but it also means internal company policies. Are you committed, as Andrew said, to the long game to driving a decarbonization solution? So that's one. Innovation, I think it's technology innovation like what we're talking about today, and commercial innovation. How are we going to bring together the technology and the deal structure to make this a reality? And then it's partnership. And we have a very strong view that no one company is going to be able to do this alone. And that's reinforced by our partnership with Carbon Clean. We believe it's going to be about bringing the right companies together across the value chain, from the emitters to the sequestration, to make this a reality for the world. And if you put all those pieces together and then take a long view with your strategy and put all that together, I think we can have a viable solution as we look years into the future.
Great, thank you very much. I'll close out then and say a big thank you to all of our experts today. Thank you, Chris, Anirudh, and Glenn, and a big thank you again to the Decarb Connect team for hosting us today. I know there are many questions we didn't get to. We will follow up with all those that were not anonymous, and do reach out and get in touch with any one of us if you do think of anything you want to discuss post this webinar. So thank you again, all.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good day.